Hello, sir. How are you?
Good.
Wearing another band t-shirt. Every time I see you, you're wearing a different band t-shirt, and quite often they're new bands as well, right?
I've got a lot of T-shirts. It's just it's a facet of my closet. I am ruled by my closet.
Yeah, and that sounds similar. I'm at this point in my life, I'm not allowed to buy a new t-shirt unless I kick one out.
Yeah, that is another facet of my life. She has not sat down hard and set rules about this yet.
Obviously, we haven't heard from you musically for a while, over 6 years between releases. So how have you been filling your days?
Well, I mean, a lot of it we were still out on tour. I mean, we
Right.
toured for 10 years straight until I think we still toured a little bit in 2019 even. So, I was playing a lot of music. Um,
Yeah.
I just didn't want to put out a record, and so I was avoiding writing. As soon as I start writing, I get obsessive. I want to write, I want to record, I want to put a record out. I think I was trying to avoid all that. I don't know what else I was doing. Learning to be an
Cooking.
adult. I guess still learning to be an adult.
Does that ever end?
Not so far, but I made a lot of improvement in the last few years.
There you go. That's what we all aim for, right?
Yeah.
The small increments and improvements throughout life. So this new EP that you've just put out, it is Butter Miracle Suite 1. This marks the end of is it your longest hiatus in songwriting, would you say?
Oh yeah, probably. I mean, I've never been a particularly consistent writer. I've always written in bursts, so it wasn't that different in a way. Because I've never been one of the guys who writes every week and then just compiles at the end for a record. I would because I play piano, not guitar. So when I'm on tour, I'm always going 2 years without writing because I can't bring a keyboard into my hotel room every night. So, so I would always take breaks. But yeah, this is probably the longest, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously you're very well known for your storytelling and, almost poetic lyrics. So you're saying that when you write songs, you wait until you're in that kind of frame of mind. Do you have like a backlog of stories that you kind of store until you're ready to write?
No, I never even think about it. I never start writing with a story in my mind. I just start writing songs and they come out, and then when I see where they're going, I point them in that direction and flesh them out. But no, I never think about songs ahead of time. We make records because I start writing. It's
Okay.
always been that way. Every time we get off tour, I'm home for a little bit, and then I start writing, and then we run into the studio, and I keep writing in the studio, and I write about a third to a half of every record while we're already in the studio, generally. Long
Um,
December, Hard Candy, Richard Manuel is Dead. Uh, those are all written in the studio. Monkey. I could go on and on. It's a good half of most records.
I guess you write well under pressure then, because a lot of people might struggle knowing that they need to come up with something in that situation.
I don't really think of it as that. It's more like, I mean, I start writing and then I just get on this. It snowballs for me. So we might as well run into the studio and start recording right then. And I kind of can't stop. The more opportunity there is to make something, the more likely I'll be to write. You know what I mean? It just seems to happen like that. Like when we get in the studio, it's probably easier for me to write. I'm so excited about creating all the time because we're recording that every time I walk out of the room, I'm like popping out another song. I mean, a good half of Hard Candy, at least, was written in the studio. For This Desert Life, Mrs. Potter's Lullaby, 4 Days, Kid Things, Wish I Was a Girl, Amy Hit the Atmosphere. They're all written like in the studio while we were there.
And with this new EP, I know that these songs almost kind of the way you wrote them, they kind of led to one another. Is that something that's happened before, or was that new on this EP that happened?
No, I mean, writing does lead to writing for me, but this specific way where they flow, I mean, they were kind of they had to, because once I decided to do this, I mean, it began because I was out on my friend's farm in West England, and I just was up there a lot of the time by myself. Me and 2 dogs. He was there with his family at times. My girlfriend was there at times, but there was a fair amount of time where I was just on my own. And I just kind of wanted to play piano, and I hadn't wanted to for a long time. So I rented a keyboard in London, and a friend drove it down on the weekend. And I started playing, and a couple days later I wrote The Tall Grass. And then the next day I was playing it back for myself, just sort of see how it was, and figure out if it was really done. And I got to the ending of it, and I was sort of playing, just sort of vamping out the ending for a while, just playing the I don't know whys and enjoying the chords, changed the chords and sang it over that, and I liked that too. That seemed to be a good addition. And then I suddenly sang this line, Bobby was a kid from round the town, over those new chords. And I was thinking for a second, I thought, well, maybe this is like Palisades Park, where I'm going to make more sections to the song and make it a longer song. But then I thought, no, I think this is a whole different song. And then I got this idea, well, what if I like wrote a series of songs where the end of one led to the beginning of the next, and you know, they're all connected, they're very different songs, but they flow together. And I got really, really excited. And that's kind of the moment where I felt like, you know, I got feverish, as I do when I start writing. I couldn't stop at that point. You know, that one line turned into Elevator Boots. You know, so for that one, I mean, I was really thinking about it at that point. As I got to the end of each song, I had to figure out a way to get to the next song. So they really kind of contributed to determining what the next song was, because looking for that transition then puts you in a piece of music, and now what are you doing with this piece of music? It's a different kind of music. You know, it's I don't remember exactly how I did it, quite honestly, because it seems like seems pretty weird, especially like getting from the big solo at the end of Angels to crash down into those big power chords for Bobby and the Rat Kings. But you know, I know I was really focused and working on it.
So because these songs kind of all flow together as a sequence almost, do you think when you get to playing live that you will incorporate them in the same way into the show?
Yeah, I would really like to. I think that's the thing to do. I've been trying to find the best places to do that. Sort of what's come to me so far is that we often break down for acoustic sets in our shows anyways. Like you hit a peak at some point in the middle of the show and then drop down and play some acoustic stuff. So it might be cool to play a few acoustic songs and then come out of the acoustic set by playing the Tall Grass into Elevator Boots. You know, we'll often do things like that, songs that transition into other songs well.
What made you decide to put an EP out rather than continuing the writing process and making an album?
Because right away I realized I was like creating something that was had a reason for being. I mean, to me, people have been telling me for a long time it makes sense to make shorter records or just singles because people digest music that way. But as smart as it might be commercially, it doesn't really play to our strengths. I mean, we make albums.
Yeah.
Singles are more of an accident for us than anything else. We haven't had a bunch of successful. We've almost never put out a single song other than Accidentally in Love, which had a massive movie behind it. You know, so we don't really do that very well. So it doesn't really matter whether it's a good idea commercially if it's not playing to what we do. So, but with this thing, you know, I realized I had a concept that was going to be 4 or 5 songs long. I didn't want to make an 8-song suite. It was like, you know, wanted a certain thing. And once I sort of got, I don't remember when I exactly thought that I would just cut it off at a certain point, but I remember at a certain point in the writing process, probably when I'd finished 3 of the songs or something, because there was a 4th song that I threw out and then came back and wrote Bobby and the Rat Kings.
Okay.
So I think at some point I was like, well, you know what, this has a reason to be shorter. You know, like as opposed to just I'm just going to write 4 songs and then put them out as a record. I mean, this had a reason to be 4 songs to me, and then it made sense. Well, why don't I just put it out? Because we already have enough of a problem with, even when we make records on a regular schedule, it's every 3 years. You know, so maybe if I'm just doing 4 songs, we could do a record every year or something. You know, maybe or every year and a half. Maybe that could work out well. But it was more like I don't really want to put the cart before the horse with this sort of stuff. Like I'm not gonna make a record to satisfy a commercial idea as opposed to like I want to make the record I want to make. And at this point, I was just like, I was working on a 4-song suite. And also, I didn't know whether it was going to work. I mean, it worked on the piano. It worked in my head. But until we'd actually finished it, I'd never heard the whole thing together. So it's not like to write a second suite at that point would have been like really, it was hard enough to hold this idea in my imagination for however long it took to get to the finish line. You know, like, I mean, because you know, I would play them and send them to the guys, and when I recorded the demos and I sent them on my phone, I sent them to the guys, and I would play the song and then play a little bit into the next song so they could see what I meant. But I wasn't like playing the whole thing, you know. And when we were in the studio, we recorded the songs by playing the song and playing a few lines into the next song and then stopping. And then, so we knew they would flow, but until we finished mixing and put the parts together and played it, I didn't really know if it was going to work. It was just this idea I'd been holding in my head for a while.
Yeah.
Once I heard that, I was like, well, I kind of really want to make a second one now because this is really cool. I thought it was, I mean, it was such a cool idea, but it's just an idea until you do it. You don't really know if it's going to work. And, I was crossing my fingers, but really all the way up till that moment when we played it after mixing,
So you mentioned that you were in England, in the west of England, when you were writing this. Was the whole thing written there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wrote like 3 or 4 songs. I started in August of 2019, and I wrote August and September when I was over there. I think I did a little more in October, but at one point I had to throw out one of the songs. One of them, as I was sending it to the band, I kept saying, "This is really bugging me. I like this song, but it's really reminding me of something else. Does anyone else hear it? Is this something? Did I copy something accidentally?" Yeah. I keep thinking Elvis Costello, and I don't know, but like, can you guys listen to this? And all the band was like, no, I love it, I love it, I love it. And then when sometime late that fall or early winter, I sent it to Brian Deck. I said, by the way, the 4th song, are you hearing anything in that? Is that? He goes, oh yeah, it's Miracle Man by Elvis Costello. And I was like, oh well, fuck. That's what I was hearing. All of a sudden, I recognized immediately. I mean, not the whole song. There's one moment in it that was like, just like one moment in Miracle Man. And I was just like, fuck. So I threw that out, and then I happened to go back over there in January of 2020, and I wrote Bobby and the Rat Kings then.
That was back in 2019, so before the world collapsed. Did you get to go down to I'm from England, so did you get to hang out in some English pubs while you were there on this downtime?
A little bit. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in England over the years, obviously, because we toured there so much. So, at this point, I was kind of out in the middle of nowhere on a farm most of the time. There is a pub in town, and we went in there a couple times to get some dinner. And they actually have a deal with the pub. They supply meat for the pub, game and stuff.
Right.
So I was more involved with the pub in that way than I was actually. I was actually supplying meat to the pub more than I was at the pub. Yeah. So I guess I went there a couple times because some people came out and we took them to dinner. One time, yeah.
Obviously, you guys have been around as a band for 30 years now. If you ever meet somebody that doesn't know who Counting Crows are, how do you sum up the kind of music that you play? And is there one song that you would play them that you feel represents your band, or a song you're most proud of?
Oh, I mean, I've met a lot of people who don't know our band, especially nowadays. It's not like we're not where we were, obviously. Especially kids. There's plenty of kids who don't know our band. I guess I would think Round Here is the most representative song. I would think Palisades Park is the one I'm most proud of previous to this record. And I would think the most recognizable is probably Mr. Jones. Those 3, I'm not sure which one of those things you want. Like Mr. Jones, clearly the most famous. If I was trying to show someone what the band's really all about, Round Here, my proudest moment, probably Palisades Park, until this record,
And I know you're a big fan of kind of discovering new music. How do you find new music these days?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of I'm obsessed with music. It's like we have a festival for one thing, so we're always looking for bands to play Underwater Sunshine. So. Yeah. I look on all the places where they have those sort of band, Wild Honey is the one in New York, and Chicago has that one. So I watch those to discover new bands, see who's good. I listen probably more to Pandora than I do to Spotify. I love Spotify for what it gets you, but you can't. It's great to get anything you want, but there's no way to know you want something you haven't heard yet. So yeah. Pandora, I've built over the years several radio stations of my own by combining bands. Nice. And I listen to that a lot, and they'll play me all kinds of stuff that I've never heard before. And also with 6 or 7 other people contributing at the festival, everyone's always suggesting new music, and so I get a lot of it there too. I guess I too tend to read about stuff, and I have people on Twitter and Instagram other musicians that I follow who are always talking about their friends. It's a variety of different ways. You just kind of, it's all about being in a constant state of obsessively looking for new music.
Yeah,
because it's
know how that feels. Is there anybody you've discovered recently that you're particularly excited about?
Well, I think Gang of Youths, the Australian band, probably the best rock and roll band in the world. I mean, they live in London now, but they're incredible. Sunflower Bean is a great band, New York band. They're fantastic. Sean Barna, Matt Susich, they're really great. Pedal is fantastic. God, there's so many. Oh, Hopalong. Francis Quinlan is an amazing writer. That band, Hopalong they remind me like of this cross between, they sound like Throwing Muses sometimes, but they also have like, they don't sound like Talking Heads, but they have what Talking Heads had, which is like a completely unique, angular sound that seems really abstract, the songs, but if you kind of tilt your head the right way, it actually makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And as a singer, she's an astonishing singer. The way she like pushes her voice, or falsetto almost like seems like it's feathering apart. So many great bands right now. I feel bad because at the moment I start listing them, all I think about is the ones I'm going to forget.
And that's part of the curse in a way. There's, we're open to so much new music these days that you always feel like you're missing out on something. So you're always just going more and more down the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah, but it reminds me of doing thank yous on records. They're less about thanking people and more about the terror of the person you inevitably forget. And who is it going to be this time? Like, it's always one of your best friends, or Mom, sorry. Like, it becomes such a stress thing doing thank yous because of that. I just realized the same thing just now. I have so many friends who are making such great music right now. We're taking Sean Barna and Matt Susich out. They're going to flip-flop for the first part of the tour. They're both incredible songwriters. Matt is a classic New York songwriter. He reminds me a lot of Paul Simon in some ways. He's just got that classic troubadour New York thing. And Sean is this brilliant, like, life as a gay man in America, and his sort of like, it reminds me of he reminds me too of like Lou Reed or Mott the Hoople describing the factory days, creating a world like that there, and he's just brilliant. They're both incredible guys. And Frank Turner's going to do the other parts of the tour. He was going to do the whole tour last year, and we were going to do it, but of course nothing happened last year. And he's got something going on for the first month of it this year, so he's going to come out for the end and play the festival as well.
You mentioned about taking some of these bands out on tour with you, and you've announced a few dates in the US. Have you looked further afield from that? Obviously, we would like to see you in Montreal again.
Yeah, I mean, it's just got to get past. I mean, crossing borders is difficult right now. Even in America, I did a lot of research because I couldn't get a sensible answer out of anyone working in the music business. I think they're so excited about the possibility of not being out of work that nobody wants to talk about anything but how excited they are. And I was really worried. So, I talked to a bunch of public health people. It's almost entirely going to be outdoors. We rerouted the whole tour to make it that way. Right. And the indoor places are places I'm not concerned about. Like, I'm not worried about doing it in New York or New Jersey. People are very cognizant of being careful here and much more vaccinated. But, we ran into problems. We had a couple gigs over the border. In Canada, in the initial routing, but it's too hard, I guess, to do it right now. Like, there's so many hoops to jump through to go across an international border with the COVID stuff that we had to take them out. I think there was one in Niagara, one in Toronto, and maybe one in Montreal. But yeah, like, the funny thing is, for this record, I've done more international press than I've done in years. So I did 6 interviews in the last few days each with Brazil and Colombia, which I've never done before. So, I mean, my hope is to get overseas and over the border after the New Year's. I would love to be able to go other places in 2022, and I'm hoping they open up. Europe's a little behind, obviously, or we are. The UK is okay. We'll probably be fine. But I'm just South America. It's a disaster in Brazil right now. The writers are all telling me, we want you to come to Brazil, but not right now.
Yeah, and I heard today that Melbourne's gone into its 4th lockdown, so everything's still uncertain,
Yeah.
So it's hard to plan anything at the moment. But I hope we get to see you in Montreal again. Every time I've seen you guys, the show has been completely different. You're definitely the kind of band where you don't really know how it's going to be when you walk through the door. So, and that's a good thing as far as I'm
Neither do we.
No, that's good.
Yeah. Thank you. So, I mean, we would love to come on, obviously. And we've played so many shows in Toronto, but you don't get to go to Montreal as much. And it's such a unique, beautiful city, you know. Love to go back there.
Okay. Well, we'll be waiting for you when you finally get to make it.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for spending some time talking to me today. And good luck with this new EP and hopefully Suite 2, whenever that comes.
It's coming. I'm going to finish writing it in the next month or so, I think.
Okay, great. We look forward to that as well then. So
thanks,
enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks again, Adam.
You too. Bye-bye.